Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about robot control, specifically how to use the gamepad's input during the teleop mode. Now, you're not allowed to get gamepad input during the autonomous mode, which means that gamepads are only useful in the teleop mode when the drivers are controlling the robot. You can use two gamepads to control the robot at once. You can have gamepad 1 and gamepad 2, or just one gamepad. To know which gamepad is which, you just need to remember which gamepad has been initialized and in what way. When you press Start A or Start B on a gamepad, it initializes. Pressing Start A corresponds to gamepad 1, and Start B corresponds to gamepad 2. Now, gamepads have several different methods of inputting instructions to the robot to control it. They have, in general, sticks, triggers, and buttons. Now I'll explain what each of those means. So sticks are, they range, the value that they return is a decimal. It can range from -1 to 1. And it's an analog value, which means that it has a fine detail of control. The more you push a stick, the higher the value gets, up to a maximum or a minimum of -1 and 1. Similar, the triggers are also analog. They go from 0 to 1, and any position along that range, depending on how much the trigger is squeezed. The triggers specifically are below the bumpers on the pad. You pull them with your index finger. They are below the bumpers that share a similar spot. The bumpers are what I call buttons because they're Boolean. They can either be on or off. You can either be pressing them or releasing them. Now bumpers are Boolean, but the other buttons on the controller are also Boolean. There's button A, B, X, and Y. And then you have left bumper and right bumper, and then you have left trigger and right trigger, and finally you have left stick X, left stick Y, right stick X, and right stick Y. Now, the sticks have X and Y for side to side, and then forwards and backwards on the stick, which means that you can have 2 axes of movement on one stick, which is very useful for robot driving, specifically when you have a holonomic drive that can move in any direction. In general, the sticks are quite useful for controlling motors, as motors take a power by default that can range from -1 to 1, so the scales automatically line up. By setting your drive motor's forwards power to left stick Y, you can pretty easily have the robot go forwards and backwards by pressing the stick, and crucially, this allows for a level of fine control, as the stick can be slightly tilted to give the motors a low value of power, and it can be pushed all the way forwards to go full speed, which is obviously very useful when you want to have your robot both be fast and maneuverable. For the triggers, these lend themselves more to servos, as servos can take a scale from 0.0 to 1, which is the same as what the triggers provide. This can be useful for a grabber that you might not want to grab all the way. Although, I tend to find that buttons also work excellently for servos. Buttons are the simplest. They are Boolean, which means they can either be true or false. Only true or false. This makes them simple to program with, and simple for drivers to understand and use. And there's also the most of these. There's 6 of them in total if you don't count the cross buttons, which I tend not to use. And these buttons are useful for toggling between different modes. They're useful for controlling if a certain mechanism is on or off. And in general, they are very versatile. So, overall, that has been the basics of gamepad control. I'll detail how to apply these values in future videos.